We are just a few weeks away from Sixers training camp, and there is still no resolution with the Quentin Grimes situation. However, a solution is coming soon. We'll talk about what that is, how it affects the roster moving forward, but ultimately, what the Sixers should do in this specific situation. All that and more coming up right here on Philly Take with RB. Well, welcome into the show. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up, hit that sub, and hit that notification bell, because we're about to be back in the swing of things, man. I can't wait for the live shows to begin. Training camp coming up. It's going to be a lot of fun. But, man, this has been one of the craziest offseason situations I've ever seen. The RFA market, the gap, has literally been squeezed so much. And we've talked about it for the last 3 months. And still, Quentin Grimes is not signed. However, Cam Thomas finally starts the domino effect. The other day, Cam Thomas signs a 1-year, $6 million qualifying offer to return to the Brooklyn Nets. Sides were unable to reach a new deal, so the qualifying offer gives Thomas a full no-trade clause and 2026 unrestricted free agency with 10-plus cap space teams. So Cam Thomas bet on himself. He said, you know what, I'm going to take the chance. Hopefully I don't get hurt. I had a really good season, and I just can't come to an agreement with the Nets, so this will be my last year with them. He's already 1 foot out the door, and this is a real possibility for all of these restricted free agents. Just to give you a quick summary, if we go back, the teams really didn't spend that much in free agency. There weren't a lot of teams with cap space, so these RFAs already got their heads squeezed as it begun, but then after time went on, teams realized, hey, if the other teams with RFAs are not going to pay them, then we have leverage too, because we don't have to pay guys. So it seems like all these guys, Cam Thomas, Josh Giddey, Quentin Grimes, Jonathan Kuminga, could end up being screwed in a similar situation. But I can't be mad at the teams for trying to be smart about their cap sheet, especially when we see teams like the Thunder and the Pacers and how they're winning, things like that. Sham says that Thomas becomes the first restricted free agent to land on a deal among the final RFAs. Thomas averaged 24 points, 3.8 assists, and 3.3 rebounds in 25 games last season. So we are going to take a look and compare Cam Thomas and Quentin Grimes and talk about what's going to happen with Grimes. But I actually want to get the people involved, and I want you to let me know down below, because we talked about this a lot. What do you think is the final result or the final outcome for Quentin Grimes? What do you think the number is that the Sixers are going to pay him? Will they pay him a multi-year deal, or will they end up in a similar situation like this? I'm going to give you my thoughts on the other side. Let me know down below. But before we do that, I got to give a shout out to the great sponsor of the show this upcoming season, and that is Sleeper. Ladies and gentlemen, you've probably heard about Sleeper, but listen, they are a fantasy sports and real money gaming app that is changing the landscape. They are the fastest organic growing fantasy platform in the world as of 2023 with over 6 million active users, but they're a one-stop shop for all your needs. Fastest scores, news, updates, all that in real time. You can do fantasy, right? You probably do your fantasy football league there. I stand by that they're the best, but you can also make picks in contests and win real money. So if I wanted to make a picks contest today with football being back, all I'd have to do is go on the picks tab. Let's go to Baker Mayfield. Look at that. The most popular one is 200 plus passing yards. Boom. We'll take that. How about Joe Burrow? Over 2.5 passing touchdowns. We'll say he goes more today. And then how about, Aaron Jones on Monday Night Football, rushing for over 0.5 rushing touchdowns. Boom. And just like that, I can submit my picks contest and enter in and have some fun. So Sleeper is changing the game. It is so much fun. Check it out. And right now, if you use promo code PhillyTake, you can get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Don't sleep on Sleeper. All right, man, let's talk about Quentin Grimes. What do we think's going to happen? Well, an anonymous executive on the Quentin Grimes contract situation said, quote, "Why would you spend $20 million on Quentin Grimes when you can get Gary Trent Jr. for a minimum?" I think that is a little bit disrespectful to Quentin Grimes. Grimes is way younger, had a better season than Gary Trent. Trent's more of like a role player, and maybe Grimes is as well. but Grimes showed you things in his bag at the end of last season where it's like, all right, maybe he can take the step and be that guy. When we think about the reports that have come out this offseason, is Grimes worth $25 million? No. Is he worth $22 million? No. And this is why it was so funny going back and forth with a lot of the fans where I said, look, the Grimes thing is going to be played out. You might as well sign Yabusele and then figure the Grimes thing out later. And everybody said, nah, well, we need Grimes. We need to save money under the second apron for Grimes. And I was like, look, man, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. For example, they're $10 million under the first apron, and they're about $22 million under the second apron. They're willing to go into the first apron, but they don't want to go into the second apron because of the harsh penalties and things like that. So really, they need to stay under that $22 million mark. But when you think about everything that's happened this offseason, and you think about these other free agents, right? And Giddey's not getting paid and Thomas isn't getting paid. Well, the Sixers are going there saying, well, why should we shell out $20 million to Quentin Grimes when we may be able to get that number down to 10 or 12 or 14? So I agree with the approach from the Sixers. But as I mentioned before, where it starts to get a little sticky is how far do you take that? We're a couple weeks away from training camp, and Grimes still has not inked a contract. And we've seen with the business side, these players, these agents are willing to go as far as it'll take them. So, all right, maybe you meet Grimes at the $14 or $15 million mark, but it took all this time, and maybe now he's annoyed and he's pissed off that it went this far. So with Cam Thomas taking this qualifying offer, I feel like it really just set the precedent, and the rest of these guys are probably going to follow suit. Maybe one of these players, like a Josh Giddey, will end up signing a multi-year deal. But when we look at Grimes and we look at Cam Thomas, like they had pretty similar seasons. Here's Cam Thomas, a first-round pick back in 2021. Actually, a couple picks right after Quentin Grimes. If we look at Cam Thomas, he averaged 24 points a game. He averaged almost 4 assists per game, and he shot about 35% from three, about 34.5% for his career. So a pretty good season from Cam Thomas on a really bad team, by the way. And if we look at Quentin Grimes, also first-round pick, 2021, like I said, he had a really good year and got so much better with Philadelphia, but you have to take into account the situation. Like how much of that was him playing with G League guys around him and just being the guy, and can he be that solidified role player if your big stars like Joel Embiid and Paul George do return to the floor? So the Sixers are looking at this and they're going, man, do we really want to pay Quentin Grimes, $18-20 million a year? Obviously, the value of the contracts are appreciating year over year, and the salary cap is going up. But you think about this team, you have Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain, who you invested in the draft. You have now VJ Edgecombe. How many guards can really fit on this team? Sure, you can look at a team like OKC and, they're guard heavy and they have all these young, quick, athletic guys, but a lot of them are on rookie contracts. They're going to have to make decisions when the time comes. And if you think about a guy like Quentin Grimes, you're already having to pay him now after half a season of looking like he really took that step. So you have to take all of it into consideration. What will his role be with the Sixers? Will he play a primary guard role? I think there is a spot for him on this team, but when I think about, $18 million a year, is it worth it? The Sixers are still going to need forward help. They're still going to eventually have to figure out what to do with this Joel Embiid and Paul George situation. $67 million player option in 2028. You have Paul George, who's making 55 plus the next couple years, and you still have those contracts on the books. So is it worth it to sign Grimes to that amount? Or should they go with a 1-year qualifying offer that would give them a full no trade clause? Grimes might not be that happy, but he can then go test the waters again next offseason. And when I think about all this together, I'm starting to think that's a better idea for Quentin Grimes. Grimes probably wants the cash in right now, but when you think about it overall, the money's just not there. The teams don't have that type of money to spend. They don't want to spend it, and they have some leverage now in this situation. So it's starting to feel like next year could be the big free agency year. And, Grimes and Kuminga and these guys have to hope that they can play out this season and have career years and cash in next offseason. Grimes could look at it and say, well, I might not get the ball as much this year. I might not have the type of stat production, and that could hurt my free agency next year. So maybe it is smarter to take a little less money per year, but for 3 or 4 years. And the fact that we are in September now and this still has not been resolved is very concerning. In a couple weeks, if this does not get inked, I think things could get very ugly. As Jake Fisher said last week, Grimes seems more likely to re-sign on a short-term contract. I do not think we're getting any resolution in July for Quentin Grimes. Well, now it's September, by the way. They want him at a very strong number. My latest understanding is Grimes, in a similar capacity to Kuminga and Cam Thomas, will seem likely to be signing a short-term agreement with Philadelphia. So I'm not mad at that from a Sixers standpoint. Like I said, I think the Sixers are going to need more help at the 4 and the 5 over the next year, and tying up all of their money on guards is probably not the best idea. We'll see how it all plays out, man. Give me your thoughts down below. How do you feel about the Quentin Grimes situation? What do you think the outcome will be? What should the team do? Give me your thoughts down below. Appreciate everybody for tapping in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I will catch you on the next one. Peace.